Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass says there's a quick way for the federal government to actually help everything calm down in her city. She said it's to stop the immigration raids.
On Thursday of last week, Los Angeles was peaceful. There was nothing going on here that warranted the federal intervention that took place the very next day. The real solution of all of this is for the administration to stop the raids.
Here to respond is Tricia McLaughlin, Assistant Secretary for Public Affairs at the Department of Homeland Security. Tricia, great to have you here. I think I know your answer, but I'll give you a chance to respond to what Mayor Bass just said, calling on the Trump administration to stop the ICE raids in L.A.
Elizabeth, thanks for having me. We will not be deterred. We will not be intimidated by these violent rioters, and we will keep going. We will double down. In the last 72 hours, we have continued to do these ICE enforcement operations. And Elizabeth, some of the people we've picked up, 5 gang members, a child rapist, murderers, convicted felons, people who have been repeatedly entering the country. We're going to keep on going, and we won't be deterred. So Mayor Bass, she's doing a real disservice not only to the citizens of California, but also those illegal immigrants in her community, because what she could be telling them is that they can leave now. Use the CBP Home app, take the $1,000 that the U.S. taxpayer is so generously offering, take the free flight, self-deport, and then maybe you will have the opportunity to return the legal right way. But if you do not self-deport, you cannot return. We will arrest you and we will deport you. But that would be the responsible leadership, not vilifying ICE, not demonizing them. We've seen a 413% increase in assaults against ICE enforcement officers. They're simply doing their job. They're carrying out the law. So that's our message to Mayor Bass. We will not back down. We will not be deterred, and these ICE operations will continue.
President Trump says, quote, L.A. was under siege before we got there, and that we, quote, will not allow the city to be invaded and conquered by a foreign enemy. Is that what you think is going on in L.A. right now?
I think the president is exactly right, Elizabeth. Let's flash back to Friday, what we were seeing. There were 1,000 protesters who were surrounding our ICE enforcement officers in a federal building. They were completely outnumbered. They were being pummeled by rocks. They were being pummeled by other objects. They were being attacked, assaulted, as these rioters were also burning American flags as they hoisted foreign flags outside of this federal facility. So I think, thank God, President Trump had the moral courage as well as the foresight to bring in additional law enforcement resources to keep the people of Los Angeles safe.
Well, he didn't bring in law enforcement resources. He brought in the military. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth said on Capitol Hill today that these thousands of troops that are in Los Angeles to, quote, help law enforcement maintain law and order. But the chief of police in L.A. says he doesn't need help from the military. He said this in a news conference very, very late last night, if not actually early this morning. He said that he and the police department were given no formal notification that the Marines were coming, and that you are making his job harder because of significant logistical and operational challenges.
Well, the chief of police also said that things were out of control. So he can't have it both ways. Unfortunately, on Friday, when our ICE enforcement officers were being pummeled and being attacked by these rioters, it took the LAPD 2 hours to respond. We need law and order, we need peace, and that's what President Trump is bringing by calling in the National Guard and calling in the Marines. And I will say further, as I said before, we will not back down on these ICE enforcement operations. If you are in this country illegally, if you are a criminal illegal alien, we will find you and we will arrest you. That includes in Los Angeles, and our National Guard is helping us make sure we can maintain those operations by protecting our ICE enforcement officers.
We were just showing a live shot, a control room, if we can go back to it. This live shot up here, Tricia, is actually from Chicago. We know that these protests are now spreading to other cities, not just Chicago, but Dallas, Atlanta, San Francisco. President Trump said today, quote, they're going to be met with equal or greater force than what you've done in Los Angeles. What does that look like? Are you going to be sending the Marines and the National Guard into those cities as well?
I'm not going to get ahead of the president, and I won't get ahead of the Pentagon or the Defense Secretary. But what I will say, Elizabeth, is unfortunately this is a natural escalation of the rhetoric of our politicians. We've seen for weeks now, whether it be Tim Walz at a commencement speech or AOC fundraising, or other politicians, including Karen Bass, calling our ICE enforcement officers Nazis, like the Gestapo. If you liken them to Nazis, you can guarantee that you are giving these violent rioters a free pass to go after them, to attack them, and that is a big part of the reason we are seeing the images we are today. It's unacceptable. We need to restore law and order, not just in Los Angeles, but let's pray that we see the force in these other cities so that we can make sure that there is peace there as well.
As you know, these protests in Los Angeles were sparked by the ICE raids that were rounding up migrant day workers from Home Depot and a clothing store in the area. The Wall Street Journal and Axios are both reporting that last week, Stephen Miller and DHS Secretary Kristi Noem, quote, demanded that ICE agents seek to arrest 3,000 people a day, triple the number that they were, and that people at the meeting felt they would be fired if they did not make enough arrests. Can you comment on that reporting and on this order that went out to round up and to increase these arrests of illegal immigrants?
Well, I have to disagree with your characterization as day workers. These individuals are in this country illegally, and I think it's wrong that the companies will exploit cheap foreign labor that's here illegally. It leads to dangerous working conditions and also leads to human and labor trafficking. So to act like these are just people who are here for the day is absolutely false. They're here illegally in the country. But further, I will say we are delivering on the mandate that the American people gave us. President Trump's poll numbers on his handling of illegal immigration vastly show that the American people are behind him. We will continue to carry out the law, and these protesters be damned.
Actually, the polls show that like 55% of Americans like President Trump's goals on immigration and on cracking down on illegal immigration. But 56% don't like the way he's doing it. Is part of this, I mean, I'm not really sure what people thought they were voting for. President Trump pledged to have the biggest deportation in American history. He's delivering on that pledge right now. Is it that people don't like what they're seeing and are reacting to that?
Elizabeth, maybe we're looking at different polls, because the ones I'm saying, the American people are well behind President Trump and Secretary Noem.
I'm looking at the poll from CBS that came out yesterday.
Of this country, there's been 50. Then I'm looking at Insider Edition polls, so we're looking at different polls. But the fact of the matter remains, there are 15 to 20 million people illegally in this country, Elizabeth. President Trump guaranteed, he made a promise on the campaign trail that he would deliver mass deportations, and that is exactly what we are doing. We are getting these criminal illegal aliens out of this country, and I quite frankly find it very concerning that Gavin Newsom and Karen Bass and the ACLU are calling for the illegal immigrants that we have arrested in LA to be allowed out. The American people should know who we've arrested. It's MS-13 gang members. It is Trende Aragua. It is child rapists. It is arsonists. It is murders. It is truly the worst of the worst people, and we will continue, not just in Los Angeles, but around the country, to arrest these people and make America's streets safer.
Right. Tricia, I think that part of the controversy is that some of those people are obviously being rounded up and arrested, and everybody's happy about that. There are other people who are being arrested who have no criminal record other than being here illegally, and that's what's sparking a lot of the protests. Tricia, thank you.
Well, it's about 75% of those who have been arrested are actually have prior convictions, so I'm happy to present the facts too.
Okay. I've just seen data that shows it's actually slightly more than half, but it's still a majority. Tricia McLaughlin, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.